800NK. How much does it weigh? How much horsepower does it have? We're not going off manufacturer numbers. We're going to tell you the real numbers in this video. We're going to test both those things, as well as we're going to look this bike over kind of end to end real close. And I'll give you my opinions as a motorcycle content creator, someone who's been doing this for over a decade as their full-time job, a motorcycle mechanic certified. Pick whichever one gives me the most credibility, or make one up. I don't care. I'm just going to tell you what I think personally, just kind of looking this bike over, what I notice about it. Let's get to the horsepower numbers. CFMOTO claims that this bike makes 100 horsepower at 9,500 RPMs and basically 60 foot-pounds of torque at 8,000 RPMs. Bit of a revvy motor, especially since it redlines at 9,500, not even quite 10. So yeah, likes to punch out there a bit. But you gotta understand, as manufacturers, when they give you those horsepower numbers, they'll say something like flywheel power. And what we're looking at is actual to the ground power, wheel horsepower. How much wheel horsepower, how much rear wheel horsepower will it make? Now to find this out, we're gonna head on over to Texas Superbikes. They'll be able to strap it up to their dyno, see the actual horsepower. If you are looking to get any tuning done, you wanna crispen that power up, get a little more out of it, get up here to Texas Superbikes. They also do a bunch of stuff here. Like this guy's wrapping stuff over here. He has no idea I'm about to do this. I'm just putting him on the spot. They also paint here. They do all kinds of bike work. Strapped up there looking proper. I'm gonna guess about 92 horsepower. Comment below, what do you think it's gonna be? Or 90, we did hit 90, 90.15. The airflow's not half bad too. Yeah, like kind of under a bit, and then a little rich, and then, but yeah, wide open, pretty good. I guess 92, I was 2 off. What'd you guess? Don't lie. Everyone's gonna lie. There's no point telling people in a video after the fact to guess the horsepower. I think I put on Instagram, I was teasing the whole thing, and I think I said it made 92 horsepower. I think that's because that was my initial guess. It was stuck in my head. But what was it, like 90 horsepower, okay? So we're 10 down, or very easy math, 10% less than the claimed horsepower, which is about what we'd expect when we see manufacturer numbers. That's not uncommon, that's about normal. Unfortunately, torque, you have to hook to a spark plug wire. I was able to get to one, but it's one of those coil cap things, so it's not actually sending a signal like you need. It's got like constant power running to it, then another trigger fire thing going, and you can always do it, there's a way, but since Texas Superbikes is just kind enough to set me up and do these things for publicity, I don't sit there and beat them up. I need my torque numbers, like if you're paying for a dyno, they'll do all that. But I'm just a happy YouTuber who's trying to get some stuff. So honestly, check out Texas Superbikes. Like I said, they can do dyno work, of course, tuning, pretty much on anything. Any just general work you need done to your bike, tires, they wrap stuff, they paint stuff. These guys have been really, really cool to me. Alex over at Texas Superbikes is like a rock star. I've watched him literally dyno one of my bikes before, look at the numbers, and just guess the amount percentages to increase or decrease fueling, and then hit it again and have it dead. That's like wizard stuff to me. That's like dudes are sitting there in the middle of a solo playing, and then they start like tuning their guitar. I'm lefty, I can do it this way. That's also kind of neat. We can compare that to the Duke 790. Knowing that this is the same motor as a Duke 790, it'd be fun to see that. There was another very interesting development we did find out while we were there. If you've seen the other videos I've done on this bike, particularly the first one, I had a major complaint that it can't crack wheelies. Now, it's not that it can't wheelie. It doesn't have anti-wheelie. It doesn't have even traction control that can sometimes get in the way of that. It's something in the computer, because it's a fly-by-wire bike, it's something in the computer shutting down the throttle bodies. When you try to dump the clutch real hard or even snap the throttle real hard, it's not giving you everything it's got. I mean, my MT-07 has got way more snap than this, and that bike is like 25 or so, 20 less horsepower. That doesn't make any sense. But we've heard that there's some kind of torque monitoring thing that can reduce power. Alex got into the ECU and he was able to see that there is something in there called torque monitoring, and it set it like 66% throttle blade opening. Now, I still think when you're wide open, you're rolling through, I think they are going to 100%. I don't think that there's we were only at 66% throttle at wide open, but it does tell me when it's doing its thing, that's what it's limiting to, and that makes total sense why this thing won't bang it up, why it's like nannying the throttle and doing some weird stuff. And he noticed he can adjust that number. Now, you're maybe yelling at me, why didn't we do this to this bike? Well, it's because it does require a license, and this is not my bike. You have to pay a fee to do the ECU like that. I would just love to feel that full potential. I would love to feel this thing at no holding back. Let's talk about the weight of this bike. On CFMOTO's website, the US website claims that this bike weighs 410 pounds. They're using the words curb weight. So what does that mean? I know what dry weight means, okay? Dry weight means the tank is empty, and I think it even means none of the other things are full, like no oil, no oil in the forks. Like, what do the raw components of this thing weigh before we add all the liquids? The weights that people really care about is things like wet weight or curb weight. Both of those tend to mean the vehicle in running condition. I have yet to see a bike that actually weighs what the claimed wet weight or curb weight is. They always seem to be a little heavier. We have the ability of checking it ourselves, so let's do that. All right. Oh, my knees. In order to weigh these motorcycles, we use my Jake technique, where I put a wheel on the scale and then the back wheel on the scale, and we add the numbers together. If you don't think this will work and be accurate, we actually did a video on this, and what I'm about to do is accurate within 0.1% accurate. This is very easy to do. You can buy one of these scales for dirt cheap. I'll put a link to one in the description. These things are cool. You should check it out. The fuel tank is 100% full. Try to make it so that you're barely touching it until this thing reads 217 for the front, 207 for the rear, 424 in total, 14 pounds heavier than CFMOTO claims. And I think that's really interesting because this thing has a 4-gallon tank on it. And if we were to fill a tank halfway up, that's 12 pounds of fuel. And that would put us within 2 pounds of the curb weight. Then take into consideration that my weighing method has like maybe 0.5% of inaccuracy to it. There you go. I'm telling you guys, wet weight, curb weight means a half tank or even less sometimes. I'm sure they just find somebody like, well, this is like average real world conditions. Because technically, yeah, I mean, having a completely full tank is not the average unless you're just a lunatic and you go get gas every single 20, 30 miles of riding. I mean, not bad. I think when you put into consideration 90 horsepower, 424 pounds. These aren't bad numbers. This is a good bike. You know, yeah, it's a little heavier than like an MT-07 or something, for instance, but you get a little more power, baby. You don't go. Let's actually look this thing over a little closer, though, and see what we can see. Let's start at the heart of the bike, the engine itself. Everyone's so interested in that. It's the first thing you look at when you look at any bike. What size engine's it got? This is a really good engine here. It's a twin-cylinder 800 790. What is it actually? I think 799 or something like that. It's a crossplane, but a very unique crossplane. Normally that's a 270-degree order. This is a 285. Ryan from Fortnite had he had a really interesting explanation as to why that was like the actual correct firing order that you should run in a crossplane. But then this guy does really good videos, like had a video debunking that. Watch both of them. They're both incredibly interesting and decide for yourself. All I know is that's a way better firing order than having a 360 or a 180-degree firing order. Just engines are boring. This just has a much more excitement. I know that sounds weird if you've never experienced an engine like that or really wondering, like, how could firing order really make that big a difference? It really can. And of course, like I said, this is from the 790 Duke, essentially sharing this motor. There's also the new, 890 and now 990 mil. I wonder how similar they are. I looked into it before. They all have different bore and strokes, so it's not like they're just punching it out over and over again. I wonder if CFMOTO will, at some point, will have access to those engines as well, especially since they've now got the 990. I wonder if the 890 or 900, they'll call it, would end up becoming available. I don't know. They still use it too. You wonder about those things. They have a relationship, if you didn't know. We should explain that. I talked about this in the first video I did. In a lot of ways, you could consider this almost like a 790 Duke. Spite has a really good video comparing them. There are differences, of course, bodywork, suspension, but motor, frame, swing arm, a lot of similarities to a 790 Duke. KTM, CFMOTO do have a partnership. This bike is built right alongside the 790 Duke in China. I know, get upset about it. It's the truth. It's interesting to me how flat the bottom is. That's got to be really helpful for the adventure bikes that use this, which is a number of bikes. CFMOTO using it in their Ibex 800. That's helpful. Big flat bottom, so you don't have to crank the engine up real high, keep the weight a little lower. You have a little sight glass right here. Cable-driven clutch. Sorry, no fancy hydraulic one on here. And we do have fly-by-wire on the throttle bodies for better or worse. The frame itself, too, looks extremely similar to the frame on the Duke. Again, I don't know for sure that it is. And the subframe back here, this is a steel unit, but it is unboltable. This is a unboltable subframe. A lot of people prefer that. It's mainly if you ever loop your bike out that you don't destroy the whole frame. But the point you taco this thing, it's a good chance you've bent other shit in this frame, too. Also, a very unique thing here we're seeing is that the swing arm right here is actually mounted on the outside of the frame. That's pretty unusual. And then you got your rear set kind of bolted right through. That's not so unusual. You see a lot of bikes using this bolting point for the rear set, for the peg. But it's interesting to see swing arm on the outside, and that's a total KTM thing. KTM does that on some of their big street bikes. They do it on the 690s. I don't know that's necessarily anything that's gonna change that you're gonna notice as a rider. I just find it interesting. While we're here, so look at this. We've got a very nice little shifter billet guy right here. Got 3 adjustment points on there. That's pretty cool. Nice factory touch there you're getting. I can also notice here we do have factory steel braided lines. You can see them here. They're every brake line on here, it appears to be that way. There is an ABS pump though. They all centralize together somewhere. Not linked or anything, but they all go to an ABS pump. Let's look at this old front end. What we got this here? We got a 17-inch wheel here. Standard sport bike, street bike stuff. You know, nice 120. I'm not sure what size these are. These look like they're at least a 300, if not like a 310 or so. But we do have twin discs on the front with J1 4-pot calipers. J1, which is owned by Brembo, basically. They're a cheaper Brembo, I suppose. They're a cast unit. They're not a mono. You can see the split num right there. So, but honestly, still really good brakes. This isn't a 150 horsepower sport bike. I think these brakes are more than adequate. We've got a KYB fork on here. I believe that fully adjustable. Yeah, sort of quick steering, sometimes a little bit twitchy, except we did add a steering stabilizer. Oh, that extra 2 pounds definitely helps out there. It's a factory part that we put on this bike, and I think you should definitely think about getting one of these if you're gonna get this bike. Oh my goodness, we are losing daylight. It just sneaks up on you, doesn't it? On the rear end here, we have another KYB shock. Non-linkage though. They're getting that from KTM stuff. Sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. Got a pretty stubby short back end here. It's a neat styling. A lot of people love it. I like it, but I don't like this thing quite as much as how the 450NK looked. That was me. It honestly looks better than the, in my opinion, but it doesn't look bad. I mean, this is a really good looking bike here. 180 on the rear. You've got one of these things. Do you like these? Do you hate them? I don't have a ton of opinion. I'm kind of indifferent about them. I will say these things bounce around a lot. It's a comment I've had from people who ride with. They say these turn signals bounce around, and listen, you know, a little loose in there. That board's gotten rattly. It didn't used to sound like that. I imagine over time that could very easily kill the board in here. In fact, let's check. Is everything still working on these? All flashing? They are. They're all still flashing, so they're working. You know, the brake light here. The exhaust on this bike is kind of interesting. First of all, it comes down very close to the oil pan here, but you have this huge catalytic converter stuffed into this area, and then the pipe kind of comes up right here, which is a neat look. I would love to hear what this sounds like with cat delete in a real pipe. Definitely, I have felt some heat off the side of the bike from my leg before when you're riding around, and I'm sure it's because of that giant old catalytic converter. Of course, you can't remove those. It's illegal. Don't ever remove them. But if you did, woo, this thing would probably sing, and you'd have to go with my boy at Alex, Texas Superbikes, and let him tune it up. So how do you feel about this front end? Talking pure looks. Here, let me give you the fanciness here. You like that? I like it. I think it's a good looking bike. It looks like something that's not exactly up to any good, and that's kind of how you feel when you ride it. You feel like a bit of a hooligan. Interesting controls here. I mean, I'll show you. You have a lot going on here because we have a whole TFT over here, so you have a lot of controls and buttons. Cruise control up here, that's pretty normal. Turn signals and brake, but yeah, you've got this whole guy. Now, how do you do the high and low beam? It's this switch right here. And the way this works is flick it forward, that's your high beam. Flick it back, and it turns it off. And then you can also have a pass light. So I essentially took one of those sort of pass light guys and added a little throw out on it. Not a bad idea, except often when I'm just generally riding, I'll reach up for the brake and I'll do that. That is really annoying, and I usually don't realize I've done it. I'll be riding along and realize, oh, the high beam light is on. Annoying. It's a great TFT, very bright. It does have a day and night mode on it. It can switch auto magically. I am not crazy about this switch. It's one of those like on and you flip it down to start kind of things, only because I feel like this could get flimsy and break over time. I think that could be an issue down the road. Hazard lights, of course, no big deal. And this is where you keep your apple juice. If we click this M button right here, we can switch between the modes, and you can do this on the fly. You just have to chop throttle. I think this works really well. Now, we talked a lot about this dash in the original video, so I won't go into all the depth of this stuff, but just wanted to show you it here. As a mechanic, is there anything I see on this that has me alarmed or worried? Not really. I mean, there is some questionability. We talked about this in the very first video I did on this. There's some questionability about this 790 motor. Is it going to have any more issues? Because this engine, we'll call it the 800. This is the CFMOTO. As the 790 Duke, this thing has had a lot of issues though. Cam delamination, oiling, spun bearings. There's been some problems with these engines. They're pretty well documented. You can look up 790 issues, and you'll see some stuff. And what we have to hope is that they've squared away those issues by now. Otherwise, though, you know, like I've said before, I'm a certified mechanic. I've worked on all kinds of stuff. I've even worked at a KTM dealer. I can't see anything on this that makes me go, wow, that's a Chinese bike or something. This is not one of these cheap throwaway pit bikes. I think people know that by now when it comes to some of these more known brands like CFMOTO. Also, nice to see with this bike, unlike some of the KTMs, they don't have any of those weird pay to unlock things. I think those are the worst. Nobody likes that. But for some reason, a lot of the industry is pushed to that, and CFMOTO is, at least for the moment, stayed out of it. I hope it stays that way. Nothing really else stands out to me as something like you need to know. If you do have any questions, ask me in the comments. If you want to talk to me directly, though, and not have to wait for me to get around to answering comments, go join my Discord. My Discord is linked to my Patreon, which costs you $1 a month and gives you access to all kinds of longer versions of these videos, uncensored versions of these videos. Gives you access to the whole backlog catalog for $1 a month, and it links you to our Discord, where I'm in there all the time, BSing with the boys, hanging out. It's a really good time. So yeah, go check that out. And we're losing the sun here, so I should have filmed this earlier. I purposely waited this time of day. I'm not a complete moron. I wanted to wait, one, to get some of that cool, you know, into the daylight. And also, God, it's cooling off so fast. It's been like 100 today. I'm not, you can't beat me up for it because I won't listen to it. I don't care. It's been stupid hot. And yeah. All right. See you guys next video.